Hello, everybody. Welcome to Africa for Dummies, your go to podcast for breaking down the biggest stories shaping our continent. As 2024 comes to a close, we're taking a look back at the year's most impactful moments, from political shifts and historic elections to geopolitical tensions and humanitarian crises. Join us as we unpack the highlights and challenges that defined Africa this year and what they mean for the road ahead in 2025. Today it's me, Nathan, and joined as always by the host with the most, Mr. Zenge.
Hello, everybody. Happy, happy what? Oh, it's not yet New
Christmas.
Year's.
No,
Okay, well,
at
Merry
least,
Christmas
yeah,
to
there
those
you go.
who,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and yeah, Happy New Year. If you're listening to this on in 2025, hope it's going well so far. I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
I shouldn't be laughing, but
No.
yeah.
Well, you did. You did though. So anyways, we had as I mentioned earlier, we have had a very eventful 2024. Some ups and quite a lot of downs, unfortunately. Starting with the
Unfortunately.
biggest, I think, piece of news that has been happening so far, which is the Sudan civil war. Unfortunately, Sudan's civil war has continued and has entered a more devastating phase, with fighting spreading to new regions. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, funding of the RSF militia has intensified the conflict, which has already claimed 150,000 lives. Sudan's culture and infrastructure are being destroyed while international attention has largely shifted away. The
Mm.
crisis remains one of Africa's most urgent conflicts heading into 2025. And for those that are listening to this and may have not noticed, but we had a really great podcast with I forget our guest's name, unfortunately, where we
Nizrin El Amin.
precisely where we had a discussion about what was going on in Sudan, and I think it's a really great podcast to check out. Most likely will have the link somewhere below. If you really want to know what's going on there, she had firsthand experience of the situation there. You could also pay attention to that. Yeah, I think any words to the worsening conflict in Sudan. Do you think that there is perhaps hope in their coming by?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to hope these days. But what I can say is a few days ago, the first food aid truck reached Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, for the first time since the war started in April 2023. So that's a good sign of relief, at least for humanitarian reasons. There have been multiple peace talks for Sudan. None of them have made serious traction because some of them exclude one party or the other party, and you can't really have a solid peace agreement with different parties excluded. So we hope next year, or rather in 2025, um, there can be some concrete step towards peace.
So yeah, moving on to the next story that also made headlines this year was Ethiopia and Somaliland's port deal, which sparked a lot of tension. So Ethiopia's new port agreement with Somaliland has angered Somalia and raised geopolitical stakes in the Horn of Africa. Somaliland sees the deal as a step towards recognition, while Ethiopia faces criticism for its struggling economy and debt default. Regional tensions are high as Somalia threatens action to block the deal. What say you, Mr. Zinga?
What say me?
Mm.
I think the so the deal started in January, and then Africa there was a AU High Representative for Horn of Africa, who was former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, who was basically sent in to like try and firefight the situation. Somaliland is an unrecognized country. It is not recognized by the African Union, it's not recognized by the UN, but it has been functioning as a country in every way except without recognition since 1991.
Interesting.
And Somalia, which is headed in Mogadishu, does not accept that. So when Ethiopia was like, "Yo, guys, Somaliland, can we have this port deal?" you're kind of pretending like they are a country. So from Somalia's point of view, they felt it was a violation of sovereignty.
Hmm.
From Ethiopia's point of view, they wanted access to a port for
Hmm.
commercial reasons. It's the most populated landlocked country in the world. So it
Hmm.
does need access to port. It is also an economic issue for them. But Turkey then stepped in and mediated between the two, and they signed an agreement. But the agreement doesn't give a roadmap as to how Ethiopia will still get access to the port
Okay.
eventually.
Hmm.
But they do both agree that, okay, we Ethiopia respects the sovereignty of Somalia, and Somalia respects Ethiopia's needs. So that's they said that's going to be ironed out in February 2025. So I guess wait and see from
Yeah.
now on.
Quite a contentious. Is that the word? Contentious issue.
Yeah,
Hot.
quite contentious, although it's slightly calmed down now.
Okay.
It's not, let's say if it was in February to like October, then you'd say, okay, yeah, super crazy because, Somalia was even calling Egypt and they met with the Egyptian president and I think the Eritrean president, almost like an axis against Ethiopia, because
Wow.
Egypt also has its Grand
Hmm.
Nile
Yeah. Right. Right.
dam
Right.
situation with them. So Somalia was like, okay, I'll call all your enemies and we'll just chill together. And, you know,
Wow.
so the only one, I guess, who was friends with both of them at that time now, both Somalia and Ethiopia, was Turkey. So Turkey used the opportunity to sign an agreement just basically say, guys, chill out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Calm down.
Chill out.
The. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can't afford the war in the Horn of Africa with so many people like that. It's too dangerous.
Yeah. 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 It could
Because we
really.
also got Sudan on fire, remember? So
Yeah.
we don't need more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely. Precisely. Yeah, and just moving on, we have had quite a number of elections. I think last year we had stated that this year was going to be the year of elections. So I'm going to pass the baton on to you, Zengi. How has the election year turned out to have been?
Yeah, no, I mean, this has been a mega election year.
Mm.
So many elections. I think someone said there's at least been 20 elections in Africa.
This year
Uh,
alone?
yeah, at
Wow.
least.
Okay.
People say it's a mega election year for the whole world.
Okay.
Uh, but some people say it's a mega election year in Africa every year. But
Okay.
this year, there's a lot of elections in major countries,
Hmm.
big economies and so on, and big changes. There've been so many new leaders now, so we really have to update a lot of like, lists.
Hmm.
So, um, starting earlier in the year was Senegal.
Okay.
Um, so in Senegal, I'll just do little rundowns of
Hmm.
each country. So starting earlier in the year, you got Senegal, the population of 17 million people, size 192,000 square kilometers. So that's not necessarily a big country. It's slightly smaller than the UK, the United
Hmm.
Kingdom, off the coast of West Africa. Its economy was 35 billion people. It's the fourth largest GDP in West Africa. Uh, so you had Duma Faye of Pastef Party. You had Amadou Ba, APR of the ruling party. Um, so Bisaru Dumaye Faye won,
Okay.
and uh, he got the popular vote 2.4 million votes and 54% of the vote.
Not
So
bad.
now, yeah. So the backstory to this basically is in Senegal, Ousmane Sonko and Faye spent most of 2023 in jail on what many believed were trumped up political charges.
Okay.
President Macky Sall, who was barred by the constitution from seeking a third term, attempted to delay the election from February this in 2024 to December in 2024.
So he
However, the
decided to delay it so that he could maybe cook up some time with the Constitutional Court or something. Or
yeah, something like
okay,
that.
okay,
However, the court rejected this request and they were forced basically to release Faye and Usman Sonko in a bit of a hurry, and they held the election in March.
mm,
Faye ran as Sonko's stand-in, so these guys were like broskies and they had like
mm,
this agenda of, Pan-Africanism,
Okay.
giving Senegal more respect in international
I think I
community.
saw I saw an article where he now doesn't allow well I don't know if he doesn't allow people, but I think himself he's going to stop wearing like suits and wearing more like
Yeah,
traditional stuff. Like
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Only traditional Senegalese.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so they basically ran almost at the same ticket, but Faye ran in Sonko's place. Osman Sonko was supposed to stand, but they said, no, just put Faye there. We're the same. It's fine.
Mhm.
So now today Faye is president and Sonko is the prime minister. In this system, the president is the most powerful figure. It's a
Mhm.
French sort of style.
Style.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the prime minister is not that powerful, but he has a bit of influence.
Okay.
Um, so it looks increasingly likely that it's sort of a co-presidency.
Okay.
Um, so recently they have made a 25-year plan up to 2050, I think. They kicked out the French military recently, um, and they've joined OPEC, which is the oil producing countries, and Senegal is a new oil producer. And they've also won a parliamentary majority, making it much easier for them to push in their new laws. So far, they're still popular. Um, they really want to correct the mineral exploitation in Senegal.
Mhm.
And they, despite people saying Senegal has been one of France's bestest friends,
Mhm.
Senegal is also adjusting its relationship with France. Many people thought it was simply just the coup countries, but even democratic, stable countries like
Looking at
Senegal
yeah.
are also changing it. So, how long
Interesting.
this bromance between Usman Sonko and uh, Bisaru Faye will last, only time will tell. But yeah, that's Senegal.
Interesting. Yeah, so that was Senegal. Is there another country you had coming
So
up
the next
after?
country, yeah. So the next country is South Africa. South
Mm.
Africa had its election in May, end of May. South Africa is interesting because it has a population of 60 million, 1.2 million square kilometers of land, making it the 24th largest country in the world. And it is the largest, they keep on changing. I don't know if it's the largest economy right now, $403 billion, but it is the most industrialized
In Africa,
economy
yeah.
in Africa. So who was running? The main political parties were the ANC, African National Congress, that's led the country since 1994, since democracy began. Mandela's party, now led by Cyril Ramaphosa, who was just finished 5 years. The Democratic Alliance, more to the sort of center right, led by John Steenhuisen. The Economic Freedom Fighters Party, the far left, led by Julius Malema, and the Mkhonto weSizwe Party, a brand new party led by Jacob Zuma. Now, when we look at who won, it's a bit different for South Africa because it's a parliamentary system.
Yeah.
The ANC won for the first time uh, since democracy began. Mandela's party basically lost its majority and got only 40% from 57% in the previous election.
Hmm.
Jacob Zuma's new party, MK, was the biggest spoiler, especially for the EFF, that was pushed into fourth place. So the EFF used to be third, then
Yeah,
became fourth after
it's just
Zuma
interesting to
decided.
me that Jacob Zuma would have that much of an effect.
Yeah, so I
Excuse
mean,
me.
people, it, it's 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 like that Eminem song. Guess who's back?
Right, right,
Okay.
right, right.
Yeah.
I didn't
Because
expect him to be so popular, especially considering the media coverage of his cases and all sorts of things. I didn't
and
expect.
maybe that media coverage actually worked in his favor. The whole
Yeah,
Donald Trump
perhaps. Yeah, yeah,
boomerang
yeah.
situation. Um, but he's still wildly popular in KwaZulu-Natal, which is where most of his
He's
votes
yeah,
came from, the
yeah.
from the party. Although he cannot stand. But if you want to know more about South African election, we did a series on it.
Right.
Um, but anyway, Cyril Ramaphosa then proceeded to make so essentially because now they are still got the largest share of the parliament and the votes, the ANC, but they can't form government, right? That's what it
Yeah.
means when you lose a majority. So Cyril Ramaphosa proceeded to make what was initially a statement of intent, which resulted in a coalition of 11 parties known as the Government of National Unity. GNU. The coalition excludes the EFF and the MK, but includes the DA and numerous smaller parties, like the once powerful Inkatha Freedom Party. Susan Pofu Walsh, an analyst, political analyst from South Africa, who I've actually had on our podcast much earlier, actually said that the ANC lost the election but won the negotiations. So if you check our previous episodes, you can see in more detail. But essentially, the ANC got 40.18%, the DA got 21.81%, the MK got 14.58%. So yeah, basically
Hmm.
coalition making is how it all ended up. And yeah, so the ministers of South Africa are all divided according to that coalition, and the opposition are all those people that are not in the coalition. Yeah.
Do you think South Africa could potentially? I mean, because for now, I haven't really seen anything terrible happening in SA, like, with regards to the politics. I haven't been paying too much attention. But do you think something like what recently happened in Germany could happen in South Africa, where you have, maybe the DA? I'm assuming that the DA is probably their largest partner in the coalition,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
where you see
Second
like,
largest.
yeah, where you see like a like maybe there's maybe you could answer this question, but do you think that there's a large divide in the economic principles of the ANC and the DA and do you think that there could be a potential point where you can see like, okay, there might be some sharp differences that could potentially like make this coalition fall apart?
Um, there are differences already with
Okay.
although not necessarily on the biggest finance issues.
Mm.
Uh, but there are differences like on education. There's a new education law that they wanted to pass through, and the DA wasn't very happy about that. Um, so yeah, it's known as the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. There was a lot of chaos going on there,
Okay.
and there's also been the removal of the Trade and Industry Minister, who was DA.
Okay.
So Ramaphosa replaced him with an ANC person.
Interesting.
Um, sort of. So basically, um, they are talking down an idea of them ever like sabotaging government. There's still like a spirit of wanting to work together, but
Mm-hmm.
like from Steenhausen, it's sort of the expectation that if you're going to remove someone from the DA, you should inform me first.
Mm-hmm.
I can have a review process. Um, yeah, it's like it's a very like dialogue based.
Okay. And yeah.
Especially from the DA, that's the main thing that they keep on insisting that the president can't fire someone without consultation
Consult.
from the
Yeah.
DA.
Yeah.
We are part of the same coalition government. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's only time will tell if they
Yeah.
want to destroy the ANC, because
Yeah.
some people did say, oh, they'll try and because to elect a president in South Africa, you need two-thirds.
Mm-hmm.
So to remove a president, you also need two-thirds.
Yeah.
So if they want to, they can put a vote of no confidence,
Yeah.
and the ANC doesn't have those seats, so they could threaten him if they
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah.
So far, there seems to be a positive outlook on some things like the electricity and load shedding.
Mhm,
It seems to have been improved.
mhm.
Although whether that's because of the DA or because of this is a bit
Yeah.
controversial.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. So the next election is Rwanda. Oh, by the way, South Africa, I think that South Africa was 30 years into democracy. This is important because 30 years ago, Rwanda also had the big moment. It had a genocide. All right, so now we can move on to Rwanda. Um, an interesting thing about Rwanda is that whilst we spoke about South Africa 30 years, Rwanda's Rwanda 30 years ago was going through a devastating genocide and that killed about 1 million people. The genocide against the Tutsi. Um, so both South Africa was celebrating 30 years of democracy and having an election. Rwanda was commemorating 30 years since the genocide and soon to have an election as well. Rwanda's election was in July. The population of Rwanda is 14 million people. And as this country, it's quite small. It's the second most densely populated country in Africa. It has an economy of $13 billion, $13.6 billion. Now, when it comes to who is running, Paul Kagame, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, then Eric Habaneza of the Democratic Green Party. That is the only licensed party to run against Paul Kagame in Rwanda. When it comes to who won, of
I
course,
wonder
Paul Kagame.
who won.
Paul Kagame,
Yeah.
Paul Kagame won with a popular vote of 8.8 million people.
How much is that in percentage again?
8.8 million people, and then his competitor got 44,000 votes. Percentage wise,
That's like
that's
90, 88% is crazy.
99.18% of the votes
Yeah.
went to Paul Kagame, and
Yeah.
0.50% went to Eric Habaneza.
My question is like, if you're Eric Albanese, like going in, like what are you even thinking, man? Like honestly, like what, or even after? Let's just think after the election. Like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking like, huh, we improved, but like
We
what?
improved by 0.3.
Like, what are you thinking, bro? Like that has to be intense, man. But anyways, man, A for effort.
Yeah, so an interesting thing about Rwanda's election was a referendum in 2015 approved constitutional amendments that would allow incumbent President Paul Kagame to run for a third term in office in 2017, as well as a shortened presidential terms, as well as like the amendment also shortened presidential terms to 5 years, renewable once, so two 5 year terms, starting in 2024, which now applies to Paul Kagame. So
Meaning,
meaning he is doing his first of two 5 year terms from now
okay,
on.
so the next
So he can
elections will
stand in
probably
2029.
are going to be his last.
Yes. According to
Interesting.
according to the
According to the
constitution.
current constitution.
Yeah,
Okay.
which was approved of in 2017.
Okay.
So meaning he'll finish in 2034.
Okay. Given the
Yeah.
current constitution.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, I just want to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kagame has been president since 2000, although he was a de facto leader of Rwanda since he helped defeat the genocide in 1994. Um, yeah, so interesting
Yeah.
uh, system they have there.
Yeah.
So
I mean from the people I speak to from there, I think it seems like there's a lot he's still a very popular guy.
yeah, no, I mean, I
Even
think even
the
if
yeah, like even the YouTube videos I see is very popular. Also, I think he seems to be. I don't know what other people would say, but he seems to be a person that really cares about his his country at least
yeah,
So
I think even with the criticism, he's still quite a popular person.
it's still
Uh,
extremely popular. Still extremely popular. So yeah,
yeah, even if yeah, yeah.
yeah. So then
So
I think
moving on, we have Chad.
oh
Chad
very
had an election.
interesting.
Chad had an election. Yeah,
That's
people
the
always
one.
forget.
That's the one that flew under the radar. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. And this is actually quite an interesting one. Chad had an election. So just a brief background on Chad. It's this gigantic country in the heart of the Sahara. It's got a population of 18 million people. It's 1.8 million square kilometers. It's the 20th largest country on Earth. It has a $13 billion GDP. Its main exports are gold, oil, and uranium. Who was running? There is a guy called Mahama Debi. He won. He was a transitional military leader, and this was an election. He had to end the transition,
Mm,
which he was standing in himself.
okay.
So transition leader come president. Mahamat Debi uh, won by 61% of the vote. His immediate runner-up got 18.54%, and then another guy got 16.93. Sorry, the names are Success Masra got 18.54, and Albert Padake got 16.93. Mahamat Debi is the son of Idris Deby, who has been president of Chad for 30, who had been president of Chad for 30 years until he was killed in April 2021. And what was technically a coup orchestrated to make his son, and he basically came in a coup, what was orchestrated to make his son succeed his father immediately.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's also quite interesting how his dad died because his dad died on the battlefield. Remember when was the last time you heard of a president dying on a battlefield? Like
Yeah,
full, like yeah.
that's deep.
Mm. So since then he had been a transitional military president, and so this transition was meant to seal the deal and come back to normal. Um, and of course, opposition are greatly dissatisfied with the conduct of the election. And because it involved a lot of violent and deadly clashes with the police, people felt there was an unconstitutionality happening. Because there are systems, when a president dies, the speaker or vice president or whoever, often you don't skip to the son. Although the son was a military general,
Mhm.
but I don't think there was a constitutional provision for his son to immediately become president like that.
Right.
Uh, so essentially, the election result means that the Deby family will extend its rule beyond 34 years
Wow.
in power. But also another interesting fact about Chad is, although it's viewed differently from other coup-built countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, due to it not doing the, boot to the French, kicking them out, um, they actually shifted after this election in November. Idris Deby cancelled military agreements with France. So that one friend that France thought it had was like, yeah,
It's a bit of a bad year for France, isn't
yeah. So you got Niger, you got Mali, Burkina Faso, and then as even the ones that you expect would
it?
keep you intact, or just like, nah, we're good. So yeah. Um, that's Chad. So that's an interesting one. And they're having a parliamentary election late December. So we'll
Okay.
see how that one will go.
Okay.
Um, so the next one is Tunisia.
Interesting.
Tunisia is one of the earliest countries to have the Arab Spring happen in 2011. The Arab Spring actually started, there was a guy, a fruit seller in Tunisia, who burnt himself alive because he was upset with how policemen were harassing him, and it just became a wider movement of people upset with the government and will like resign. And then the whole Arab Spring happened. This happened in Tunisia. So everyone pays special attention to Tunisia because they sort of expected it to be the example to all the other Middle East countries for
Countries, right?
democracy. So it had an election this year. Um, just a brief background, Tunisia has a population of 12 million people. It's not that big. It's right at the tip of Africa, top end of Africa. Um, the leader right now is the president is Saied, constitutional lawyer. The economy is 40 has 40 they have $48 billion in GDP. Main economy activity is petroleum and mining. So there was Saied, who was running the president as an independent, and then there's Ayachi Zamel, uh, who was running for a political party. Saied won by 90.69%.
Wow. That's
Wow,
yeah.
and his opponent got 7.3%. 25%. I mean, that's better than Rwanda, I suppose.
Uh,
Uh, I mean, but yeah, so there's some interesting things here to notice. So Kais Saied wins second term. Kais Saied got over 90%, but there's a lot of criticism due to the election's fairness and participation. I think some people were jailed. There was
okay.
a low, very, very low voter turnout. Only 29% of eligible voters participated. And the election just saw two candidates running against Syed, with major political parties calling for a boycott. Syed's main challenger, Ayachi Zamel, received only 7% of the vote, despite being sentenced to prison days before the election, and the campaign had no rallies or debates.
Mhm.
There were some authoritarian concerns. Syed, who was concentrated power and suspended parliament since taking office in 2019, faces criticism from rights groups for undermining democracy, although defends his actions as efforts to combat corruption. So Tunisia's democracy is somewhat on a shaky path.
Okay.
Uh, I think many young Tunisians probably don't think they have a democracy anymore. So it's a very interesting turn from the movement
Beaming, you
that
know,
started
beaming
in
example
2011.
of democracy to where it is now.
What?
I said you said it's taken a long path from where it was before, where it's like an example of
Mm,
what democracy should be and where
should
it
be
is
like,
today. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So now the big one that everyone has heard about,
Which one?
Mozambique.
Oh, that you're gonna say.
Yeah.
That you're gonna
That's what I'm
say.
gonna say.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
Mozambique is probably the most controversial election this year in
Yeah.
Africa.
Because I think
Uh,
there's still some stuff going on right now, right? I'm not mistaken.
yeah, there's lots of people dying. There's a prison break as well. But let me just get into the
Really?
yeah. Let me just get into the brief details of the election and how this
Yeah.
is all. So Mozambique is a country on the southeastern
I want to
African
see you.
coast.
I want to see you get the names correct. But anyways, go ahead.
Southeastern African coast has a population of 33 million people. Its main economy, one of its main produce, it's one of the main producers of natural gas
Mm,
and does $22 billion in GDP. So who's running? From the ruling party, there was Daniel Chapo
mm,
of Frelimo, the ruling party that has led Mozambique since 1975 through civil war, which ended in the 1990s. Venancio Modlane of Podemos, which is a new political party. He's a breakaway from the opposition, the main opposition, used to be the main opposition known as Renamo. Um, Standing with Renamo is Osufu Momade. Renamo was a political party that has existed since the 1970s as well. They were military belligerents during the civil war with Frelimo. Um, so Daniel Chapo of Frelimo got 65.17% of the vote, 4 million votes. Venancio Modlane got 24.19, 1.6 million, and Osufu Momade of Renamo got 6.6%, 448,000 votes. So Renamo has been pushed into third place. So this is a bad day for Renamo. Who won?
okay.
Obviously, Daniel Chapo won Frelimo. Daniel Chapo was a little known, I think, provincial governor from central Mozambique who was just picked by Filipe Nyusi. Filipe Nyusi was the president of Mozambique who has served two terms,
Hmm.
constitutionally serve a third term. So he is the new flag bearer of Frelimo. Now, Modlane, Venancio Modlane's party pushed out Renamo, and now they are the main opposition. However, the election in Mozambique remains highly disputed, with massive protests erupting across the entire country.
Yeah, because
Uh,
sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
like when I
go ahead.
Google Mozambique, it seems like Felipe Nyusi is still president.
Yes, he is. He's president,
Yeah,
but
because the one
they have
incumbent is Daniel Chapo, I'm assuming.
No, the winner of the
Mhm.
election is Daniel Chapo. The winner of the election in October is Daniel Chapo. He will be sworn in January. Filipe
Okay.
Nyusi, the outgoing president.
Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. That's okay, okay, okay. He'll be sworn in. Okay, that's what that was my confusion. Okay,
They have like a period of time
okay,
before
okay.
to allow for contestation,
I see.
uh, which is interesting because this is a highly contested election. So, as of December 29, 2024, at least 261 people have been killed in violent clashes with authorities. Two key political allies of opposition leader Venancio Modlane were mysteriously killed by gunmen earlier. Modlane is now in exile, rallying his supporters from Facebook abroad. At one point, South Africa even closed its border in response to the unrest. In late December, Mozambique's top court confirmed that Frelimo's candidate Daniel Chapo had won, extending their rule since, therefore extending Frelimo's rule from independence in 1975 for what could be another 5 more years. Modlane has rejected the results, and he also claims he will be sworn in what will be a parallel ceremony next month or next year, January 2025. Adding to the turmoil, a deadly cyclone recently struck, killing over 90 people. Mozambique is famous for cyclones. Cyclone Chido. And a prison break also happened on Christmas Day, where 6,000 inmates escaped, adding to more chaos and looting across the capital. The Southern African grouping, SADC, Southern African Development Community, held an emergency meeting in Harare a couple of months ago, but that didn't result in any solid action being taken. But Daniel Chapo apparently has called for dialogue. Modlane sent conditions for dialogue, but um, Daniel Chapo doesn't want to accept those conditions for dialogue.
Mm,
Um, so it's a bit of a deadlock, difficult situation in Mozambique. It's very worrying. Don't know how long this will last, but yeah. Yeah, so what do you think?
yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of sad to see like a lot of these African countries kind of going through. It seems like the same, with exception of a few. Sort of like the same things that are seem to be recurring over and over again. Elections being sort of
Mm,
not being free and fair, and I think it really either keeps turning up the heat, you know,
yeah,
until
yeah.
we reach a situation where unfortunately, you see what's going on in Sudan, and then you
People
see
don't
what.
feel listened to.
Yeah, exactly. It's either going to turn up the heat, or you're undermining institutions that are supposed to be there to serve you and then the people. So in some sort of way,
Yeah,
it's like you're sort of degrading the same things that are supposed to be there to help you. So I think
yeah.
it's sort of like you're how can I say, you keep on building this debt that at some point you're definitely going to have to repay.
Gonna have to pay
um,
it. That's true.
yeah, so moving on.
Yeah, moving on, we've got Namibia.
Interesting.
Um, we've got Namibia. Um, actually,
Interesting.
scratch
I
that.
actually didn't know that
Scratch that.
Namibia.
Wait,
I
we'll
didn't.
do.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
do. Namibia was on 27th of November.
Okay. Start. Now, moving on to the country where we used to say a joke, because I lived in Botswana a little bit, but there used to be a joke that there are more elephants than people in Botswana. Moving
Oh my
on
day.
to the yeah, I know Botswana is actually very it doesn't have, I mean, now probably it's changed, but at the time when I was there it was very like not very populated, but very beautiful country, man. Really beautiful
Mm.
country. Like, yeah, yeah.
I've been to like northern Botswana where the
Interesting.
Chobe National Park
Yeah,
is, and
that's where I
it's
was as well. That's where I
stunning.
was. It's
Yeah,
breathtaking, right? Yeah, yeah,
it's a
really beautiful.
stunning,
Yeah,
stunning place.
yeah.
And I just like countries with few people. It seems peace.
It's very peaceful. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
And also,
wow.
the way Botswana developed, it's just so well planned. Like the
Mm.
roads and everything. It's really I think something that people need to talk a lot more about, like
Yeah,
the
maybe
way they.
we should do an in-depth episode
You know what I was
on
thinking? I was thinking we go to Botswana, right?
yeah.
We haven't done a documentary in a long time.
That's actually not a bad idea. That's
I'm
genuine.
saying it's such an amazing, because you know the thing is, even though I was in Botswana, I actually never visited Taberon.
Really.
Yeah. I was only in
And
Kasane and
Gaborone is in the like southern part of the
I
country.
don't even know, but like yeah, I
Yeah.
never really went to. I
Okay,
never went to.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Botswana had an election on the 30th of October. Botswana has, as you said, not a lot of people.
Hmm.
Population of 2.6 million people. It's 500,000 square kilometers, basically. It's like a bit smaller than Texas. It's got an economy of $19 billion and lots of diamonds and cattle. It's got one of the highest GDPs per capita in Africa. It's often held up as a, model of democracy, example, and so on. But there are lots of complaints about high costs of living, increased costs of living
Hmm.
amongst Botswanans. Normally, you don't really pay attention to Botswanan elections because the same party wins and wins and wins.
Yeah.
However, in this election, before I say who won, let me just mention who the candidates are. So there was the UDC candidate, Duma Boko. There was Dumaleng Selshando of the BCP.
We're
There
like
was
right next to these people. Why do they have such different names?
okay.
like,
I'll
like
let
their
you. I'll
names
let
are
you think about it.
their
Let
names
me
are
get
so
through
different. Sorry.
it.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
There's Mefato Ril, Ritile of BPF. I think that's the Botswana Patriotic
Retile.
Front.
Yeah. Every
Ritile.
country has a patriotic front in it.
Yeah. Everyone wants to be patriotic about something. Then there's Mokgweetsi Masisi of the BDP, who was the incumbent president. Now, the incumbent president basically lost. The BDP has been in power since 1966 or 68. When did Botswana? 1968. No, 1966,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I'll trust you.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. And so they lost.
Hmm.
Um, they not only lost, but they were whipped into fourth place. So
Whoa, that's a huge drop.
yeah, so the UDC is now the ruling party, and the BDP is not even the main opposition. The BDP dropped from being the ruling party to being the fourth largest party with only 4 seats. They lost 34 seats.
My
They lost
goodness.
34 seats. That's a lot for a country like Botswana, where I think they have maybe about 60 something seats, you know.
Did
Uh,
the cost of living really go up that much? That,
yeah, they
oh my
slaughtered them in the
goodness.
election.
That is,
Dum-
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
huge scam.
so Duma Boko is now leading. He won 36 seats.
Mm,
And they got it's a simple, you just need a it's also parliamentary, by the way. It's
mm.
the largest party in parliament who selects the president. Um, and yeah, so it's uh it's quite crazy. And
Mhm,
another interesting thing here is also Mokgweetsi Masisi was president, took over from Ian Khama.
mhm,
He won one election, but his relationship with Ian Khama deteriorated quite quickly. Um, Ian Khama accused Masisi of targeting him.
mhm,
He believed that the charges were political. Um, some were to do with arms, illegal arms, and so on. So Ian Khama put himself in self-imposed exile in South Africa,
mhm.
and he actually spoke to the media extensively about how he's being mistreated by the president of Botswana, and he sort of put a stain on Botswana's legacy of, this sort of
Peaceful.
peaceful, tranquil
Mhm.
place and so on. And so the second
Not,
Masisi
not, not
can
everyone
come
can
up.
be Zambia. Just saying. But anyways, go ahead. I'm kidding. I'm
All right.
kidding. That's a joke. That's
So when Masisi lost, Ian Kama came back and it's reported that Duma Boko restored all his privileges and immunities. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Botswana. Transition was peaceful, seamless. Masisi shook hands with Duma Boko, and I think it was a watershed moment for many countries in Southern Africa because many of them are still dominated by the ruling parties. Um, so countries like Zimbabwe with ZANU PF, who have had the same party, the Zimbabwe has had the same party since 1980. In Mozambique, you can see that the ruling party is going through a lot of issues uh, since independence. Tanzania has the same ruling party since independence. Um, Namibia has the
Mhm.
same ruling party since independence. South Africa's ruling party since independence has got a beating in this last
But
election.
still there, yeah.
Yeah, but in Botswana, it just happened, and it's just like, okay, we move
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep rolling. So I think maybe a lot of young people are very, you
Happy.
know, um, yeah. So if we can move on to Namibia, still in
Interesting.
Southern Africa, on the 27th of November,
That one
population
flew
of
flew under the radar. I'm not going to
what,
lie. The election I did not I did
really?
I didn't hear about it.
Namibia is an interesting one. It's just there's just so few people. No one really.
Isn't it the same like 2 million?
Yeah, two points. Yeah, the same actually.
Okay.
2.6 million.
Yeah. Actually, maybe we should switch the documentary to Namibia because I've always wanted to go to Namibia.
I feel like this is just you talking about
Sorry.
adventures,
Namibia.
adventures you just want to
I want
take,
to
and then
go. Yeah, no, Namibia is decent. No, 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 my bad. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So 2.6 million people, and it's 824,000 square kilometers. So it's massive. It's a gigantic
Yeah.
country, and
Although
it's
most of that land is like, oh, a significant amount of that land is desert, eh?
desert.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Namib
yeah,
Desert.
yeah.
And you know how we said Rwanda is the most densely populated country? Namibia is the least. Rwanda is the second most densely populated country in Africa. Namibia,
Really?
Namibia is has the lowest population density in Africa. So it's
Mm-hmm.
huge and few people.
Mm-hmm.
Its major economic activities are diamonds and fishing and oil.
Yeah,
So
quite.
who's running? Namibia is interesting because earlier in February, I think, Hage Geingob, the president of Namibia, who was to be finishing his term anyway, passed away. He had
Mhm.
cancer. And Nangolo Mbumba, who was his deputy president, took over. Um, the ruling party, Southwest Africa's People's Organization, SWAPO, the party that led Namibia to independence and has governed Namibia ever since, had already selected Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa as their flag bearer, female. And so the interim president didn't stand. He basically was just a caretaker president, and he appointed Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa as his vice president, almost like a transitional gesture. And she indeed won the election, and she got 58.07%. This is interesting. Look at the numbers.
Mhm.
638,000 votes. This is how
Oh
few people.
wow. Isn't that like
That's
a
that's a lot if you're in Namibia, because this is
yeah, yeah.
2.6
Two for
people,
six
and
million, yeah, yeah, yeah,
638,000 of 2.6 million people voted for her. So I guess it's a strong majority, a population. You
yeah.
know, when I saw this the first time, I was like, wait, are they missing zeros or? I saw the numbers. I was like,
Yeah.
like, right. But that's those are the numbers. So she won, and she's now the first female president
What's
of
the name again, sorry?
Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa.
That
Netumbo
that
Nandi
sounds
Ndaitwa.
actually closer to the names that you hear like around.
Zambia, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Ndaita. Ndaitwa.
Yeah. Ndaitwa. Yeah.
Sounds
Um,
yeah.
She she's
She
one,
actually
two.
kind of low key looks like she could be.
Maybe she's from the northern part of Namibia,
Yeah,
close to
because she looks like she could be a part
Kagame.
of UCZ or something. Crazy.
Really, who
Interesting.
knows?
First female
Yeah,
president.
she's
Amazing.
it's,
Amazing.
mm,
So that's actually a positive. That's a positive for Africa, no?
yeah.
That's a huge
She's now
positive.
the second female with actual executive powers president in Africa.
Right, and Tanzania is the other. Is like
Yes, Samia Suluhu Hassan. Because
crazy.
there's female vice presidents, there's female prime ministers,
Nah, but president, like, yeah.
ceremonial. Now she's actual, what she says go.
Yeah. Big ups.
Uh,
Look at Sadik being progressive, man. Look at
yeah,
that.
you got a female president on one end, and then you've got like a five. Yeah.
Female president on one end.
That's the truth. Like, I'm sorry for
Yeah,
being, big, but
yeah.
like, yeah. And then so
Dang.
anyway, the other opponents were Panduleni Itula in the IPC. He got
Mhm.
25.84%. He was very angry. He wasn't accepting the results. Um, there was McHenry Venani, PDM, who got 5% of the vote. But so just a bit about the election. Obviously, Hage Geingob died months before the term ended. Netumbo Ndaitwa um, will be extending SWAPO's rule of 24 years. They've been in power since independence in 1990. Mind you, Namibia was a colony of Germany and then handed over to South Africa. Uh, South Africa was occupying it illegally, so they never really gave up until 1990 when Mandela was released. She's a party stalwart and has served numerous portfolios, including vice president during Mbumba's term recently, as I said, his short term. She was deputy prime minister, foreign affairs minister, environmental minister, information minister, women's affairs minister. And during the freedom struggle, she was actually deputy representative at the SWAPO headquarters in Zambia in the 1970s.
Maybe she was on
So,
UC on the
oh, wait,
UCZ board.
hold on, how did I even forget this? She's an alumni of my undergrad.
Oh,
Kiel,
Kiel University. I see
we
it
studied
right
the
here.
exact same course.
I
So, how about you?
mean,
Which female Africa have you met?
what? So you're going to also become president of Zambia?
So you see, this is a line of I'm trying to sum up,
Mm, I see. I see.
yeah, the
Yeah.
line of glorious people.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Actually,
But
respect.
she's she's quite the trailblazer.
Mhm.
My only concern was that okay, she's relatively old. Why didn't she get this role much earlier? But I mean, she seems when
Right.
she's
Better late
quite
than
lively.
ever.
Not like she speaks, she's quite lively. She's not like like Joe Biden, where
Mhm.
you don't understand what he's saying or anything. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Respect.
so that's Namibia. That's Namibia. What do you think
Yeah.
about Namibia before we go to our last one?
I think the age is concerning a little bit
She's
for me.
80 something. She's
Yeah,
over 80.
but still, yeah, exactly. That's a little bit concerning for me. But I'm happy that first of all that a female has taken up, and hopefully this could start to set sort of a trend. Of course, not saying that people should vote basically because somebody's this and that, but it's nice to it's really nice to just to sort of see. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the indicators of being a proper country, right? Like having
Yeah, I
some
mean,
sort of,
when half of your population
yeah,
is doesn't in the executive, then there's a problem
there's
in
a
the country,
problem.
probably.
Yeah, so I have to say like it's great, but of course the age is well here it says it's 72 years. But
72?
yeah, that's what it says. Her
Oh,
age
my
is,
bad.
yeah, no problem. But yeah, but it's still a little bit concerning. I mean, I know
Yeah,
that people are still very fully at that age, but then still,
yeah,
I think for a continent that has a significant amount of young people and where most of the young people are going to live in. I think
Yeah,
in the future it's quite concerning that still in terms of leadership roles people are.
let's
Uh,
hope.
but I'll still take the win. Hey, woman president, I'll take the win.
Yeah, let's hope she does well.
Yeah.
Um, so Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
Ghana. When
Ghana,
was Niger?
Ghana, Ghana, Ghana.
So Ghana has a population of 34 million people. It is a West African country and is roughly the same size as the United Kingdom. Its economy is worth 76 billion United States dollars.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Its some of its major exports are gold, coca. Is it coca or cocoa?
I think it's cocoa.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and oil. So Ghana is got a bit of reputation for being a stable democracy ever since John Jerry Rawlings in the 1990s restored democracy. It was used to have lots of coups um, since after Kwame Nkrumah. It used to have lots of coups after Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, but in the 1990s onwards, it has been sort of like a stable beacon of democracy in West Africa, especially now with all the coups that are happening
Hmm.
uh,
All over.
across. So Ghana was an interesting election because you had John. It was basically between two people, between John Dramani Mahama, former president of Ghana, and Mahamadou Bouamia, who was the um, vice president. Can you just double check that for me?
What did you say?
Can you just double check? Uh, Wait, hold on. Yes, he's vice president of Ghana. Um, I thought he was finance minister.
Okay.
Vice president of Ghana. So there's the NDC and the NPP. John Mahama was for the NDC, and the ruling party put Mahamadou Bawumia. The current president, Nana Akufo-Addo, has served two 4-year terms. Their terms are 4 years, two 4-year terms, and he is done. So he put, his party selected Mahamadou Bawumia, who was the vice president, right, to stand to extend the party's um, ruling for another 4 more years. But John Mahama, who was president before in 2012 to 2017, stood in this election and won.
Hmm.
So basically, it's a big comeback for John Mahama after 8 years.
Yeah.
Uh, John Mahama became president when one president died, but he died in the same year as an election. So just a few months later, he stood for election and he won in 2012. And then in 2016, he lost to Nana Akufo-Addo.
Mm-hmm.
So
So it's the
Nana,
comeback.
yeah,
Okay.
became 8 years.
Do you think that people were also maybe looked at the time he ruled and then looked at like Nana Akufo-Addo and said, okay,
Yeah, I think
things are.
it was one of those things because Ghana was going through a terrible, like this past 2 years,
Mhm,
Ghana was going through a really, really terrible inflation situation with their
mhm,
currency steady. And then they're also going through Galamsey. Galamsey was basically a debacle concerning minerals, gold
mhm.
panning,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how it's affecting water and environmental um,
effects.
situations for
Yeah,
the so water sources were being contaminated because I think allocations for mining and gold panning were just reckless
yeah.
going in.
'Cause artisanal mining is quite a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that caused a huge situation and there were lots of protests over this. So John Mahama came on and positioned himself as, you know, I think he said that's about the economy is stupid. He stole a line from Bill Clinton, basically.
Mhm,
Where he just campaigned ruthlessly on the economy because that's what was affecting everyone. And he said he wanted to bring Ghana into a 24-hour economy. Uh,
sounds very familiar.
Very familiar because the former Zambian president had said something like that.
Mhm.
No, most people don't really know. They kind of crumbles when you ask them to explain what they mean. Because
Yeah,
was just saying, oh, there'll be construction jobs and so on. Haven't really quite got exactly what that would look like. When I
But
think of 24 hour economy,
isn't that the what can I say? Like the African leaders, like they're like because again, like I can't really hate on it because I think I've seen leaders who have tried to be the opposite of that, where they campaign on actually talking about real issues, that are affecting the economy, and people don't resonate with that. What tends to
yeah,
happen is they
yeah,
sort of have to flip their message to a more digestible one. Oh, we're
digestible
gonna
fashion.
bring this, we're gonna bring that, we're gonna bring this. Caused all these
Yeah.
problems and that sort of a thing. But then when you stop and ask, you're like, how are you going to, do? You can't even ask that because it's like, oh, you're a hater or something. So
Yeah, you see,
yeah,
the thing is, politicians are the products of their people, right?
right,
I mean,
right,
you can
right.
say, you can say, why is this politician not got a plan? You can't even explain this. But the truth is, the majority, what he's entertaining those to
Yeah,
who, like, he's just being appealing to
yeah,
his customers, essentially.
yeah,
And people don't want to listen or read a manifesto. If you are serving those people, then you make your manifesto as small as possible.
yeah,
You figure out the plans later once you
yeah,
actually win. Because if your manifesto is 20 pages long,
yeah.
you can spend more time on your
A
manifesto than on the actual.
thesis.
Yeah. But an,
Yeah.
an interesting thing in this election is John Mahama's vice president is a woman, Jane Nana Okuko Agyemang. She's the
Mm.
first female vice president of Ghana. Um,
Interesting.
Yeah. So Mahama won with 56.55%, 6.3 million votes. Um, and then Mahamadou Bawumia lost with 41.61% of the vote. He got
Mhm.
4.6 million votes. In fact, Bawumia is interesting. Before they even officially announced that he lost, he just said himself on his own, like, okay, I've lost this election because
Yeah.
our own internal voting says that I've lost.
Oh, okay.
Normally, most candidates would wait till
Yeah,
like
fight it tooth
yeah,
and nail. Yeah.
especially if you're the second, the second runner up,
Mm.
you'd wait for every single tally. But for him, he was just like, okay, the way it looks is not, yeah, this is the end
It's not
of,
looking good.
yeah, yeah.
Seems
But
like it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is Ghana's election for you. So Mahama is back. So yeah, I guess big highlights here. You have Ghana as his first female president. Namibia has
Mhm.
Ghana as his first female vice president, and its former president is back.
Mhm.
Uh, Namibia has a. Oh, I forgot about Mauritius. Mauritius. We just talk about Mauritius quickly.
Mhm.
Mauritius's ruling party lost every single seat. Uh, Mauritius's ruling party lost every single seat.
Yeah.
There's the former president um, Praveen Ramgoolam, or yeah, I think Praveen Ramgoolam has come back to power. And Mauritius is interesting because there was a wiretapping scandal uh, on internet, and the internet was shut down for a short while, which was
Oh.
quite unusual for a country like Mauritius, where Mauritius is often also touted as democracy and so on.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, Let me just check this. Yeah, so in Mauritius, you had Naveen Ramgoolam and Praveen Jugnauth. Uh, Naveen Ramgoolam was of the Labour Party, and Jugnauth was for MSM. Uh, Jugnauth was the incumbent prime minister, sorry, and it's based on a parliament type of voting system. And Jugnauth lost. Well, they didn't lose every seat. Sorry, I just verified. They basically lost every seat and were left with two seats. The new party got 60. They got 1.4 million of the popular vote, 61% of the vote. And it's interesting because Somalia, I mean, Mauritius, there was a social media ban. It was the last until after election, but was lifted. Um, after there was lots of protests and disagreement with that. Uh, Previous months, a month or so before, the Chagos archipelago was given to Mauritius. For those that don't know, the Chagos Islands, uh, Diego Garcia particularly, the Chagos is an archipelago, basically a collection of islands. Diego Garcia has a military base from the United States and was British territory for a very long time, despite Mauritius having claimed it for a very, very long time as well, and has been lobbying. And so the courts finally gave it back to Mauritius.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Although there is a 99-year agreement that the military base will stay there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very critical base for America. It's right in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
America.
But there have been thousands of Chagosians who used to live there that have been displaced. And the issue of compensation now arises and reparations for them and
Mm-hmm.
how they. Um, so yeah, no, it was an interesting election.
Mm.
Um, Mauritius is an important African country. It's a big financial center, big tourism center.
Yeah. Tourism is big there.
Yeah. Also big for
Yeah.
university. African students go there for
Yeah, yeah,
university.
yeah. I heard as well. Crazy.
So yeah, I think that rounds up all our elections.
The
We
big
have
elections.
yeah, we have done every election
President
from
election,
Ghana,
yeah.
Namibia, South Africa,
Crazy.
Tunisia, Chad, Rwanda.
But we
Uh,
all know everybody's waiting for the big one. 2026.
uh,
August. The Republic of Zambia.
it's made people
Big
believe.
26. Oh man.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
do you think? What do you think your biggest, like the most interesting thing is about the elections this year?
I think the loss of power for the business as usual parties, what I would call business as usual, ANC.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it has to be a wake up call for such political parties. Like we can't just keep doing things as we used to. It seems like people actually might might kick us out, that sort of a thing. So that's
yeah,
quite that to me was really interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So I think like there's just a big lack of like the Gen Z sort of generation that hasn't grown up during the liberation era is now of age.
Hmm.
And um, it's interesting. We did an episode on the Kenyan protests, the Gen Z protests.
Hmm.
Kenya also had a period of one party state where people fought for freedom. And I think someone did mention that there was a period of time where people were willing to just toe the line because they were afraid of the way of how one party state used to be.
Hmm.
Um, but the younger generation doesn't have any experience of that. So
Hmm.
they're not that afraid anymore, which is why they were protesting so much. But I think it's a big sign across that many people in our generation are not going to put up with
Mm.
a lot of the things that previous generations might have tolerated. Um, but I think there's also just a lower level of patience.
Hmm.
The amount of information that we have, and the amount of um, how easy it is to just spread that information means that there won't be like people waiting for some official confirmation of uh, results or even just general governance. Like in Kenya, there was a scandal about the airport being sold to an Indian company, um, Adani. So some guy just published it, and he was
Yeah.
just like, "Yeah, this is what's going on," and they protested, and it was cancelled. Like
Yeah.
after 4 months of protest. So. I think young people is why these elections have
Power.
shifted so ruthlessly.
Yeah,
Uh, and in countries that are not that democratic, um, like Mozambique, it can become very violent. And unfortunately, a lot of people will die.
mm,
Um, so
yeah.
yeah, but I think elections are good because they expose the true colors of any country because power is at stake.
I agree. I definitely agree, and I think that's a good note to end it on. We've kind of gone through what went through the year, so we can see there's very little positives that have are there. I
Hey,
mean,
no, there's positives. There's
but that's what I'm
female
saying.
president,
You really have to squint your
the
eyes
female
to
vice
see.
president in Ghana,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, but quite a lot of
the young president in Senegal,
unfortunate news in other countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hoping for a better 2025. So to all our listeners, we just want to say thank you for listening to us, the messages that you send us, everything. We thank you so much for everything that you've done for us throughout this year. Thank you to
Mm.
Mr. Obama Foundation, Mr. Zenge, and yeah, that's it from me. And wishing you guys a great 2025.
I am an African.